Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kerrville Weekly News Roundup, hosted by the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. Yours truly, Andrew Gay and Tom Fox in the studio today, run over our top news picks for the week. As always, Tom, why don't you do the honors and kick us off? What you got for us this week?
Sure. So this first story comes to us from the Kerrville Daily Times, and it's one of the most unique stories I have ever seen in Kerrville, Andrew. A stained glass window was created in 1983 by Tivy high school student Masha Ru- Rukina, and she was 17 at the time. It's a fabulously beautiful piece of stained glass, but it turns out that's just a part of the story. First of all, to have a woman of 17 create something like this is just stunning. But even more so is her personal history. She was born in what we used to call the Soviet Union. And her parents, her father died under, quote, mysterious circumstances, end quote, and her family was expelled from the Soviet Union. And her mother's name was Galina Popova. And Galina Popova and her three children were stripped of their Soviet citizenships. They were shipped to Vienna. From there, they applied for U.S. visas and they were granted visas, and they moved to an area of New York City called Hell's Kitchen. From there, they got to Kerrville, and not quite sure how all of that occurred, but they did. Russian born, formerly Soviet born, Masha is in school in Kerrville, of all places. And her mother's an artist who works in glass, and she is also an artist who works in glass. And she created this, got funds, and they put it up at the old Tivy High School library. It was moved to the new Tivy High School when it was constructed. All of this is made even more poignant because Masha died when she was 22.
Hmm.
So she's not around to celebrate this, but her sole remaining sibling, her brother, came back to Kerrville to rededicate this. And it's in front of the new library. And along with our superintendent, Brent Ringo, the librarian who really headed this effort, and her brother rededicated this. If you happen to have a copy of or can find a copy of the Thursday Kerrville Daily Times, there's a great picture on it, certainly on the online edition too. And I would ask you just to look at it think about, like I said, a 17-year-old girl creating this. That was really, I've not seen anything like that in Kerrville. That was my first story. My second one, a little more poignant, as Kerrville Pets Alive is seeking foster homes to facilitate the rescue and adoption of dogs and cats. Kerrville Pets Alive has been literally inundated with animals that have been either dropped at their door or released in Kerr County. And they even said this past week they had seeking foster homes for 8 puppies who were abandoned in Centerpoint. So I recognize we're going to have a whole conversation around getting your pet spayed, but right now Kerrville Pets Alive urgently needs foster homes to get these dogs to get them acclimated to people so they become more adoptable and give Kerrville Pets Alive the space that they need. So if there's any way you could help be a foster, that would be great. Kerrville Pets Alive would definitely appreciate it. And you'd be doing a great public service. What stories have gotten your attention this week, Andrew?
Thanks, Tom. Let's start with the one that I like at the top of the list, which is the Texas Arts and Crafts Fair is this weekend at the Hill Country Arts Foundation, which is out in Ingram. A lot of people know that location because of the mini Stonehenge hinge replica that is there. My wife and I have attended this event, I think 3 or 4 years in a row. It's fantabulous, if I can use that as a word. We have had such a great time. There's vendors of all kinds out there. There was food trucks last year. The weather, I think last year was a little warm, but this year it's looking like it's going to be great. So we're really looking forward to moseying on out there this weekend and checking that out. There's everything from artisan jewelry to painters. There's arts and crafts for the kids. It's a great fair for the celebration of the arts, and it's family friendly. So be sure to check that out if you're in the area. Then second story was from last weekend. My wife and I had the pleasure of attending the Sherlock Holmes Mayor of the Night Halloween party that took place at the River Hill Country Club Mansion this past weekend. We had a great time. We dressed up as Gomez and Morticia Adams. We really tried to go all out with our costumes, but we weren't the only ones. And that was what was so cool was there's a lot of the company there was just everybody was over the top with their costumes. We saw the Lorax. We saw some homemade Star Wars costumes that were some of probably the best that I've ever seen in my life in person. They were fantastic. They actually won the costume contest, but all of this was in an effort to help raise funds and awareness of the film that CJ Goodwin is putting out, the Sherlock Holmes Mayor of the Night, that we are also helping him create this podcast called Into the Darkness. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. So anyway, we were able to participate in that this past weekend. So it checked a lot of boxes for us. We were happy to participate in that, and it was a successful event. But that was number two. Number three is movies in the park. So the city there's a survey up right now that you can find online through, I think I found it on the Hill Country Community Journal's website, but you can find it on social media as well. But it's a QR code or a link that you can click on and give feedback to the city about what movies they're going to plan to show for their program Movies in the Park, which is a kid-friendly event where they've been showing movies at the park in the evening on designated nights throughout the year. I think it's been like once a month or something like that, but it's been a really successful event. It's been a big draw for some of the younger families here. So you can put your input and feedback directly into that survey if you go and find it online. And then last but not least, I wanted to mention this upcoming week is the presidential election, in case you did not know, and voting will be done Tuesday. So we just want to make sure that we mention that you should get out and go vote. It's not so much about not from my perspective, not so much about the politics. Just get out and just participate. I already did my duty. I think Tom, you did yours too. So that's next week, and obviously that's a really big deal. But that's it, man.
Actually, no, I'm gonna brave the crowds on Tuesday.
Oh, you're doing on election day. Yeah, that is brave. I haven't actually ever done that. I've always done early voting. I'm too scared.
Anything going on this weekend for you other than the arts and craft fair?
No, I think that's it. We're gonna be resting up, like I said, because we were at the Halloween party last weekend, and then we had back-to-back weeks where we had 3 or 4 events a week. So we are looking forward to resting this weekend.
Unfortunately, the University of Texas is off, so you won't be able to sit in and watch UT. Penn State has a huge game against Ohio State, so that will be on my television. But there are a couple of events I wanted to highlight. The first is a swap meet at the Hill Country Youth
Event center?
Event Center.
Yes.
Yes, it's the
Definitely moving
November
to
one,
Ag Barn.
Ag Barn. Check that out. It's always a lot of fun. And ramping up to Christmas, they always have a lot of interesting stuff. The second is the fifth annual Kerrville Cruise In Car Show. Yes, there's a car show coming to Kerrville, and check that out if you like old cars or unique cars. And I want to shout out to an event in Fredericksburg, which is the fifth annual gathering of cowboys called the Texas Hill Country Cowboy Gathering. It's over 2 days, Friday and Saturday, November 1 and 2. And it's going to celebrate the tradition of the cowboy culture with a weekend of Western music, cowboy poetry, and storytelling. It's a part of certainly our heritage here in the Hill Country. And kudos to Fredericksburg for having the fifth one. We don't often shout out to events in Fredericksburg, but I wanted to shout out to that one, Andrew. I'm going to be watching a little football. Cowboys are on this weekend. Orange or not, as I said, Texans stunk it up last night. It's going to be a short football watching weekend for me.
Yeah. So lots of couch time. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks again. We'll look forward to visiting with you guys next week.
Thanks, Tom.